We want to welcome you back to What Are You Thinking podcast. I'm Ron Lewis, my wife Lynette. We're here to really have a great day, and I'm so glad you're with us.
We're going to talk, as we always do, about the power of changing your thoughts in order to change your life. We love to feature guests who are experts in various categories of thinking, and today will be no different. You're going to enjoy our conversation with one of our friends, Paul Cody, who's here to talk about young people, what they need, where they're going, what's on their hearts, and how to reach them if you're a parent, an educator, or you yourself are young. So thanks for joining us. We're going to dive right in today to the What Are You Thinking podcast.
Paul, thanks for being here. It took you a little train ride to get here. Right. Thank you, trains, planes, automobiles, and on feet. But Paul, we got to get to you really quickly here, but New York City is a rigorous place.
It is.
To live, to work here, and to do what you do. And somebody asked me one time, how do you get around this city? How do you, like in our North Carolina home, I have a car. She has a car, and here I just said, well, I just use my BMW. So, you have a BMW? I said, yeah, bus, metro, walking.
There you go.
So that's how you got here.
Well, before we get started, Paul, please, if you can, let me do the honor of giving a formal introduction here.
Of course.
I at least have to tell a couple anecdotes here because our listeners are going to want to know about this. But you're Vice President of Young Life Field Ministries and Development. Many of us listening, watching, you've heard about Young Life. Maybe you've been a part of it at some point. But here's what I love. It says you're passionate about providing opportunities for youth and young adults to reach their God-given potential, but by providing access to training, programming, and fun development that enhances and encourages young people to become, and this is what I love, healthy spiritually, intellectually, socially, and physically. Isn't that what we all want for our kids? Health, wholeness, vision, passion. You're an expert on that. We want to dive in with you and ask you right now at the beginning to give us a nugget on when you work with young people right now, what's your biggest encouragement and maybe your biggest burden with young people right at this stage in our culture?
I think the biggest burden is time. We now live in a culture where everything is supposed to happen instantly. It's a microwave. It's hey, I can jump on live really quickly and tell you what's on my mind within 15 seconds of thinking it. Ministry and relationship doesn't happen that way. It all happens over time. I think the one thing that we lack in the culture that inhibits our ability to reach adolescents with the gospel is patience. It is somewhat of the Acts. We're coming up on the day of Pentecost, and you hear, hey, Jesus tells approximately 500 people to wait in an upper room for the promise of what's to come. Well, to be honest, only 100 and change made it to that upper room. In other words, people prioritized different things and weren't patient enough to wait. And so all ministry is two things. It's contextual and it's relational. If you can think about anybody who has ever visited your church or a ministry, 90% of the time, they have visited it based on a relationship that they had with someone who was a part of the ministry. If you were to consider why people stay at bad jobs or bad churches, it's one common reason. It's because of the relationships that they have within it. And so when you're looking at youth ministry, time is a huge factor, because very few of us are willing to invest the time that it takes to make the mark relationally that needs to be made, or the imprint that needs to be made relationally to help a young person get to where they need to go. So we want them to go from, hey, I'm on the hood, I'm on the corner in the middle of the block and I'm hustling, to the next day being on the worship team or being in the choir. Like, that's not real life 9 times out of 10. There are some miraculous conversions, and that's great, but the majority of those conversions take time, take relationship, takes hard conversations, takes tears on a shoulder, takes a scream out of something, and then you've got someone patient enough to listen and to walk with. The second factor not only is not just time, but it is the inability to walk with a young person regardless of their response to the gospel.
That's good.
And because our relationship is predicated on seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, that means that there is a conversion. We tell ourselves that we haven't done our job if they haven't converted, so we cut and run so that we can find someone who will convert. And in some situations, a conversion may not ever happen, but it's not our job, right? Our job is
That's right.
is to make sure we're planting seed. Someone will water it. God is the only one who makes it grow. And at the end of the day, it really becomes an individual decision. It's really not about us, but we spend so much time making it about us that we have problems walking with them regardless of what their response is to the gospel.
Yeah.
Really good, Paul. Thank you for sharing that. That right there is an eye opener. Let's go back to your personal life and your upbringing, and you look like a really healthy guy from a great family. You never know though. People could look at me and say that, but we had a really messed up family, but it became a great family. So where'd you come from, and how'd you get trained, and how'd you get called? Those kind of things.
Wow. I grew up in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. I am the oldest of 6, and my mom and dad divorced when I was 4.
Oh boy.
So from the gap of age 4 to about 13 or 14, I didn't really have much of a relationship with my dad. He moved to Maryland. He was a longshoreman. He had been in the military. So when he was looking for work, the most beneficial work he could find was a longshoreman, and he did really well as a longshoreman. I'd say the best thing my mom ever did was to protect my relationship with my father I never ever heard her say anything bad about him in my presence until I was 22 years old. And so by that point, I had the opportunity to begin to form my own relationship with him, and then figured out all the backstory stuff as I went along. And that is the one thing that preserved our relationship. The second best thing she did is who she connected me to. I was an awkward middle school kid who was taller than he should have been for his age, had more acne than was allowed, and nobody really paid too much attention to who I was. And so we went to, so my upbringing, my first few years I spent in Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. It was where I first, came to know Jesus, and then came to know Jesus, and came to know Jesus, and came to know Jesus again. It was one of those circumstances where I was well aware of the sin in my life. And so every Sunday for about 6 weeks, I went to the altar every Sunday. I got home one Sunday afternoon, and my mom said, "Hey, you don't have to do that. But if you decide to go up one more Sunday, you and I are going to have problems." And I'm like, "That's not true. I'm doing something here that is going to help preserve my soul. So there's no way you're going to give me a beating based on I'm trying to preserve my soul." So week 7 comes.
Literally a beating?
Week 7 comes, and I go to the altar, as was my custom, and I get to the back of the church after Sunday school, and she just smiles at me. I know what that smile means. I get home, and as sure as she had committed it, I got a beating. At the end of that beating, this is what she says. She says, "What you have to understand is Jesus paid for it once and for all. You don't have to go pay for something multiple times when he already paid for it once." My response was, later on in life, is you probably could have shared the same thing minus the beating. But I got the point. And then we transitioned to a church called Gospel Tabernacle. And Gospel Tabernacle was literally the place where my life changed. I was still the awkward kid, but she gave me access. She gave me access to 5 men. And these 5 men have known me since I was 11. And I'm now 54, and we are still in relationship 43 years later. These guys walked with me through absolutely everything imaginable, through my basketball career, through my adolescence. They taught me one taught me how to manage money. One was responsible for the foundation of my faith. The other was my relationship coach, who helped me avoid a couple of different situations, pre-marriage that I would have made if I had not listened to his counsel. The other one he was the cleanup man whenever I got in a mess. He was the one who helped me see two things: Jesus and the correct way to go. And then Jeff, he was the sage. He was kind of the catch-all. He knew everything. And so if there was ever a tie, like, we would go to him because he would figure out how to break it. So between Jeff Woodard, Keisha Pell, Aaron Green, Kevin Williams, and Teran Smith, they were the backbones of my life and my faith.
Wow.
You know what I love? What I love about that
Yeah.
is there's a saying that we say a lot in our household. When we lost our 23-year-old son to cancer, when you go through a deep loss like that, the loss of your father. I mean, he was still alive, but he was lost out of your life. I often say God doesn't replace, but He adds, because you can't replace a human being that is that human being. But in this case, your mother became determined to not replace your dad. She honored him even in your presence by talking well of him so that you could find your way without having to muddle through her way of him. But yet she also added to your life by availing these men and being around them and building community. And I don't know who's listening today, but don't grow weary in your situation. Don't feel like you're going to fail just simply because you've had loss of a marriage, loss of a spouse. God can redeem it through amazing ways. And for you to be close to these men, even these years later, and have been so shaped by them, Paul, what a testament to the power of community, the power of the church.
And she provided a hedge. Those guys provided a hedge. I made, of course, a bunch of bonehead mistakes that could have been even more significant.
Do you know of a teenager who hasn't been, including yourself and myself, do you know any teenager who didn't have a bonehead?
Right.
In case they're watching from places that, what's a bonehead?
Right. Right.
I think you could look
levels
it up.
of stupidity.
Let me say this. Your mother, I want her to know that she is a hero. And what she did, although it wasn't perfect, to beat a kid for walking the up the aisle to receive Christ. I've never heard of somebody being beaten for that.
Right.
She really did a good job, and I'm proud of her. And I'm proud of every mom who is going on without a spouse, and yet they are giving the double portion of their energy, their time, their money, all that. So I want to just say to her, well done.
And here's the interesting thing about her. She passed away in 2017. So my dad passed away in February of 16, and my mom passed away in September of 17, which both of them were excruciating because of the rate and the pace that the loss occurred. But having those supports and that fence, the old hymn, Jesus be a fence around me every day. Jesus was a fence in five or six men who really helped build my life. And so I have three kids, 18, 16, and 13. My daughter's the 13-year-old, and my two sons are 16 and 18. Wow. And literally, they actually call people when they get in a jam that are connected to me because I've actually given them permission to do that. And so it's been a reduplication. Oh. And the sixth person, I mentioned six, five of them were men who led me. The sixth person was the person I led, which was my brother Carl, who, I led to the Lord through a myriad of different struggles, being a part of Islam for a minute as he's trying to find his way. And then he comes to know the Lord because we're having some conversations just some conversations between he and I, and he has now become, a person who is walking with the Lord, passionate with the Lord. And again, it is a relationship. That's a whole nother podcast just to talk about the story of our relationship. But the gift that it's been to watch him grow and mature in his faith, and the opportunity to both now, on one hand, follow me, and then at the same point, me be able to follow him as we now kind of, as the scripture talks about, come let us reason together. It's a totally different game. But the framework for that was built when I was 11. So part of that, and part of what I know with young life and adolescence, really has everything to do with what happened when I was 11. Most of what I know now, what I teach, how I train, is the ability to kind of reach in a bag and pull out the things that I was taught.
It's so encouraging, and so ties back to your original point, which is patience.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes, the younger we are, certainly, the more we feel like certain senses of failure because things haven't happened yet.
Yeah.
And God, who is orchestrating every detail of our lives, when it seems so normal, so catastrophic even at times, we look back. It's why I love to read the Bible, because there's story after story of seeming failures or just silence from God, or years in prison with Joseph and David running from his assignment that God himself gave him, and running from Saul for years, hiding in caves, at the time having no idea when this was going to come to an end, if it was going to come to an end. And yet we read those stories to understand the nature of God, the character of God, to be faithful to the end, to circle back even with your brother and bring restoration. So that's a great word of hope. I don't know who's listening and needs to hear that, but don't lose hope in your patient phase, because God is really, really big.
But I'd like to talk about Young Life. I think there's a lot of people around the world who are very familiar with Young Life, and I think there's also many people who have never heard of Young Life. And here are some of the statistics that have come to us with Young Life. Kids known by name, 2.9 million kids are known by name. Explain known by name.
So earlier on, we had different metrics trying to track the impact that we were having on adolescent culture. And it was never helpful to track it by salvation, or what we would call spiritual skins, right? Because that's also very difficult to track. And so when we began to think about what it looks like to have an impact on adolescents, what we did was we thought about, how do we quantify relationships?
Mm-hmm.
How do you quantify relationships? Not quantify where they are in the journey, it's quantify the relationship.
I got you.
And the way we found to quantify the relationship was, how many kids do you know by name? Not kids that you say hello to and walk by, or even that came to a Young Life type of event. But how many kids can you walk through a hallway, through a neighborhood, at a bodega, in the mall, and you can call them by name, whether it's their nickname or their first name, or whether they're called by their last name. So that's how we identified how we would quantify our aspiration of having relational impact.
So, Paul, is this number global, or is it U.S., or is it New York City? These 2.9
No, global.
Global.
Yeah.
And then, so your average weekly club attendance is more than 378,000 kids are showing up.
And can you explain to someone who's listening, may not know, a club attendance? So Young Life has traditionally always been a club in a school, not a Christian school, usually, but a secular public school. Is it high school or middle school?
Both.
Both.
Both now. In its genesis and its origin, it was always high school.
How many nations would this include? Is this like 10 nations, 20 nations?
Oh, no, like 103.
So 103 nations.
Countries.
Hey, congrats. Paul, you're the vice president of this stuff. I mean, are you getting ready to be the next president?
No, I'm not. There are a myriad of reasons why I would not be. But
this is encouraging, though, to have these clubs going on. I mean, you send your kids to public school knowing that there's an augmented group trying to help them become everything we said, spiritually, mentally, physically whole in a world that's broken.
Yeah, and that's why the school, two bases, the school base and the neighborhood base are really significant. Because the school base, you can get in, you know this, in New York City, you can get in any school you want to if you can help. The only schools that are pretty limited from you being able to help are like places like Stuyvesant, that is all really private, or Bronx Science, which is really high octane as well. But most other high schools in the city, you can actually get into if you can offer a program or a service that adds value to the building. That's all you really have to be able to do. And then your commitment has to be that, hey, during 8 to 3, it is your day and my aim is your aim. So you want them to be better academically prepared, so do we. You want their character to grow and develop, so do we. You want them to have grades that are good enough to pursue whatever else they choose to pursue, so do we. You want them to be a good contributor to society, so do we. So between 8 to 3, our aim is your aim. But at 3:15, when the bells ring, the aim becomes different. Our aim is to continue the relationship that we actually began in this building and introduce them to Jesus, whether it's in this building or outside of this.
So this is a little bit mind-blowing to me. So that you're saying that in this building that we purchased like 20 years ago or so, or 18 years ago, and you're saying that something happened here, that you guys worked together with our team, Josh and some others, and you guys worked together and you saw children's lives or teenagers' lives get changed.
Absolutely.
And I remember a lot of that.
And I think we should explain for those who aren't seeing this or with us.
Go ahead.
This is a brownstone building on a street in New York City in what we would call, what's literally known as Hell's Kitchen. It's a region of the city. A lot of restaurants, a lot of apartment buildings. But we do our recordings here in our studio that's in Hell's Kitchen in the basement suite of a building that's a part of our church called Every Nation New York City. And there was a time when you and others here at the church were using this same facility where we're seated right now to do afternoon outreaches after high school, where kids would flood in here by the dozens.
Called it the 414. I remember it like it was yesterday.
And there's something that's interesting. We almost sold our spaces here. We have three levels, this one, that one, and then one up. And we almost sold it. And we were like really tired and exhausted with the conflict that's going on between the neighbors, the sound, all that was going on. And these kids are coming into this building and you have tenants up here and all that. So the 414 thing hit me though, when there was a study from an Argentinian economist named Luis Bush. And he was the one who kind of gave the final conclusion of the study called the 1040 window.
Okay.
Where people in the 1040 window have, the majority of them are completely unreached to the gospel.
And the 1040 window is globally speaking.
Yeah. It's global. It's a map. It's a demographic. Okay. So then this study came out like many, many years, like 2 decades later. And they were looking for research around the world for who are the kids, at what age is the age of significance for these young people to say, I want to serve Jesus and I want to make a difference and make disciples as a young person. And it came out, it's an age demographic. And it came out ages 4 to 14. So when I read this, I'm like, oh no, we got to keep this 414 address. This is a reminder of that age group. So thank you very much for sharing that. That's meaningful, to our church family, that we had the faith and the heart to do this when we had no money. And so many things that we do, we have no money and no resources, but God comes through.
Yeah, I mean, we took hundreds of kids to camp that used to come here every summer. Josh Goodwin was a great partner, and actually for a little while worked part-time with us while he worked full-time with you. So it made the tie It made the tie more significant. And many of those kids who used to come here for 414 actually became members of the church and leaders in the church as they developed, as they developed in their faith over time.
This is true.
Neat.
And so we're thankful for that. But let's make it about you and Young Life. Let's go back.
Here's what I was going to ask is, Paul, with Young Life, you were someone who was responsive to your mom's introduction of these men in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to a parent who maybe doesn't have that kind of receptivity with their kids right now? I mean, they're getting a lot of no thank you, let it go in one ear out the other. They're struggling to even feel that there's an appetite for more with their kids. What would you say? How do you deal with that reality that a lot of people face?
Any parent that's watching, here's the thing I would say. You become intimate with who you pray to, who you pray for, who you pray with, right? Number two, you also have to be careful who you talk to, who you speak for, and who you speak with. The best advice I could give you as a parent is to be meticulous with who you speak with. There is someone that can reach your child that you know of. You just have to think about who that person is. And my advice would be is to give them access to that person without them knowing you did it and continue to feed them.
That's good.
Now, I can't tell you all my trade secrets because if my kids watch this, they will know some of the things that I've been up to. But I promise you, if they're surrounded by the right person, at some point, every adolescent tunes out the voice of their parents. We never know what we're talking about. We're always too old. We're always too behind, and we will never catch up. However, the right person connected to your teenager is going to be a gift. And I'm going to say this now. There's an organization that, if you've never heard of it, called Access. It is absolutely amazing. It's one of our national partners. And Access is a ministry that helps parents have some of the hardest conversations of their life with kids.
Okay, I've seen this online. Can you give the spelling for that? For
AXIS.
Okay.
And the leader's name, his name is David Eaton.
And they
he is
are
a great
putting
friend
out
of mine.
Some rich materials for teenagers. And I started reading that thinking, we have 11-year-old twin girls, and we're going to have to start reading this religiously.
Yeah, because what they do is they provide, when you think about gospel translation, they provide translation, adolescent translation. So
Good.
Any of the terms, words you're hearing that you think have one definition, but you're way off, so they're laughing at you.
Yeah.
Access actually has a team that researches youth, adolescent jargon, so they can help you interpret what signs and texts mean, can help you understand linguistically what's actually being said, and then they actually prepare you for conversation. So parents, I'm not telling you have to give all of your leadership away to someone outside of your house. I'd say in combination of the person who can actually reach them and a resource like Access, please find it. It's access.org, and it'll lead you through some stuff. All the resources on it are free. I mean, again, Young Life-wise, we're starting to use that material in conjunction with some of the things we have, like we have family weekends. So some of the things we're thinking about, how do we infuse some of that material in our family weekends so that families and parents get access to it while kids are off, while their kids are off playing and doing some other things at the time. But, again, I'm going a little off script here. One of the things I think about as a mantra, and this is just me personally, it really is collaborate or die. It is, if you want to...
I love hearing this.
Collaborate or die.
Collaborate
this
or die.
So
Right.
valuable.
If you want to remain relevant, it's totally based on who you're willing to work with. If you feel like you're going to be the Lone Ranger with the only answer, you'll be irrelevant in 3 to 5 years, you'll be done. Because you haven't figured out that relationships are the network for life, and because they are, the other entities that could actually help you go further faster and strengthen your cord and your bond are, absolutely immeasurable. But you can measure when someone crashes and burns, and 9 times out of 10 is because they did it by themselves.
That is so good.
Really good.
One of my mentors told me a few years ago, she's about 30 years older than I am, seasoned, incredible New York woman, not a believer, but wise. And she said, I make it my aim every year to make one new younger friend. It really helped me because I've found that the older I get, the more younger friends that I have actually help me more even in my parenting. Because now I'm around younger people who look up to me maybe as their mentor or someone they want to be friends with. And the impact, even the spillover of that friendship can have on my own kids has been a real surprise gift. Because now we're sort of all in it together versus just I'm the older generation. And like you said, they find you irrelevant to what they're going through. So there's a lot of creative ways to collaborate.
You brought up some really good stuff here. Thank you. I'm sincere. I'm just trying to take a moment to thank you. Instead of at the end of this, I'm doing it right in the middle of this podcast here. Thank you. You're putting stuff on the table. I would say the majority of Christian parents in the United States are struggling with their kids, teenagers. I think, we had our first round with our 4 sons, and they were in the middle ages of like from 10 to 20 in that phase, those 4, and for the most part it was pretty good. And then came digital stuff, and somehow the digital era is squeaking out, even though we don't have much. And it's somehow, I don't even know how this happens.
Well, I think one of the differences is, and I'd love your comment on this because you study these issues for kids, but one of the things I think that is different now with the digital age is they're actually drawn to, our young girls are drawn to people who look like peers doing these self-expression videos. And they will watch them day and night, whether it's, here's my new makeup, here's what I did on my vacation. So they almost feel more self-empowered by watching these other kids.
Sure.
Like, I know what I'm talking about. I'm an expert. I want to focus on my ideas. Whereas in the other years, you would watch television, but there's a separation between these celebrities and you yourself. How is that playing out in what you're seeing in the clubs and other challenges that these kids are confronting?
Comparison. One word. Comparison.
Yep.
It's not, you don't see it this way in Scripture, but principally you see comparison as a thief of joy. A lot of people have a tendency to focus on the benefits of social media, the ability to learn quickly, but you can actually learn wrong because you take a couple of snippets and you build it into a philosophy that's not educated, that's not time-tested, that's not learned. And so you spend a lot of time comparing yourself to the people that you see on social media. And so when you don't measure up to what you see, it secretly seeps into your attitude and the way you think and feel about yourself. We would normally say, hey, what did we do? Actually, we did nothing. It was what they've been watching that has informed and educated. So I'd say this, my oldest son is a great basketball player. He's going to play in college at Hardin-Simmons University in Abilene, Texas. And he's worked hard. Like, he is one of those guys who developed a lot of his skills, not because he had a coach or a trainer, but it was because he did a lot of watching what was called a day in the life. And a day in the life is what high-octane athletes would capture. You'd follow them around, how they ate, how they worked out, what they did in their free time, how they interacted with their friends. And then all of a sudden, I began to sense this pressure in him. And that part of that pressure was that he wasn't as far along as he wanted to be in the basketball recruiting process. The challenge was is that because he had been watching so many people who were going to Kentucky, going to Duke, going to North Carolina, were getting huge NIL deals where they were making $5-10 million before they actually did anything, in life, he was comparing his progress to that. And that became a frustration for him because he didn't feel like he was getting as far as he needed to get. And it hit me. I was like, oh, I need you to stop watching this as much. Because what hit me is he was beginning to compare his journey to the journey of everyone else he was watching. And that wasn't his journey, right? He wasn't a great player since he was 10 or 11. He hadn't hit anybody's radar. He wasn't getting recruited in Nike camps, and he wasn't playing on the circuit. But he was quick, he was strong, and he was getting better, and he was coming for you. But because it wasn't happening at the rate and pace that it was happening for these other folks, he felt like he was behind. And so people are feeling like they're behind because they're looking at the exception and not the rule.
What kind of effect did that have on his mind?
Oh, like when he didn't feel like he was being recruited as quickly as he wanted to be, depression isn't the word. But it was a struggle for him because he felt like, why is this person getting recruited? The last time I played him, I actually killed him. Like, why am I not getting recruited? And he's getting recruited. There's something wrong with that. That's not just.
Yeah.
That's how it started to play out. And so we had to work and work and work and work with him to say, okay, their journey and your journey are not synonymous.
That's right.
Right? If you were as good as they were, you'd already be on a radar already. So let's not compare your journey to their journey. Let's isolate your journey and see what the Lord does with your journey uniquely. And again, that's kind of the thing that began to open his mind. He is a creative. He's multifaceted. He's got, digital and video skills as well as being able to play basketball. But the things began to loosen up when he started to mind his own business.
There you
That
go.
is
Right?
such a
It's
good
like,
discernment on
mind
your
your
part.
own
Be
business.
secure in yourself.
Yes, be
or
secure
in Christ.
in your journey for what your journey is and not the journey of somebody else's.
Don't you think, too, that what plays into that is having circles of relationships that are real and live
Yes.
and interactive
Mhm.
and not isolating?
Yes.
Because now when you actually know somebody a day in the life, you're going to find out, too, some of the things that never make it to the video.
Absolutely.
The anguish, the loss, person that told him no, the things that are less made for television, if
Right.
you will. And I think that's so important. You said something before we dove into some of these subjects, Paul, that I'd love for you to talk about briefly. You said, at the heart of who I am, I'm a church boy.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to talk about the role of church in a young person's development and what you've learned about the role that a community like a church plays.
It is hard to put into words, but as an adolescent who wasn't significant anywhere else, I was significant in the church. And not because I did anything. There was nothing for me to do. I was 11 or 12, but I was significant to somebody in the building who invested in me in ways that people outside of the church did not invest in me. And that has given me this hopeless love affair with the church, good, bad, indifferent. I personally believe we know that Christ is the hope of glory.
Yeah.
I also believe the hope for the world is actually his body, which is the church. If there's going to continue to be significant change, it's going to be because the body of Christ gets itself together in a way that it can really help translate and dictate traffic to the world to move it in a way that it would not go without the church. And so being involved with Young Life for now about 27 years, there's not been a place that I've served with Young Life that I've not been knee deep in my relationship to the church that I've worshiped at. So if it were in Baltimore when I was a member of Greater Faith Hope Tabernacle or Living Waters Ministries, I was still knee deep in those churches as I did Young Life simultaneously. It gave me the opportunity to be blessed and to be a blessing because I had two things that I loved deeply. And when I moved to New York, I would say I'm part of one of the greatest churches on this side of heaven, Christian Cultural Center with Dr. A.R. Bernard and Pastor
and
Jamal Bernard.
I love Jamal.
Again, the church has given my external world a place to sit within the internal context of the body of Christ. So I've been able to take what I've learned in the street and apply it to the church. And there's been no place that I've gone that those churches have not been open to what the Lord was using me to do and to bring in the midst of it. So I get the unique opportunity to serve as a vice president for Young Life, and at the same time be a leader and support of one of our campus churches where I'm teaching twice a month. Very few people get a chance to do that. And so I just, as a hopeless church boy, being able to merge both worlds has always been important to me because the parachurch is supposed to do what para means. It's for, it's support, it's attached to, not replacement of. It is to do what you need to do in one place so that the church can now do what it needs to do in another place. And the church has always been a place, by the grace of God, that has empowered me to live out my calling in totality and not in isolation. So I've never had to just live in a Young Life world. I can live in the Young Life world and live in the Christian Cultural Center world and teach and help lead and help make decisions. And, was doing that since I moved since I moved here in 2003, which all credit to my wife. When I got married, she refused to come to Maryland. She didn't like it too much. And so that's how I made the decision to move to New York. I was a smart man at that point. I don't know how much smarter I am now. I just know I didn't blow that decision. But she connected me to Pastor Jamal at the time, and I was working with Young Life, had just moved to the city. And for a little while, it was like, yeah, we'll see. Because churches in communities of color have always watched parachurches parachute into the city, and then when they couldn't take it, they disappear.
They left.
And when you're talking about parachurch, not everybody who's listening might understand that term, but parachurch would be like a Young Life.
Yeah, it would be a Young Life.
Where it's an outside group that has similar motives to the church, but they're not associated or part of officially that local church.
Absolutely.
And they augment what the local church is doing. But
if they do it right.
If they do it right.
So the whole word of para is like parakletos in the Greek. It's come alongside.
Yes.
And so they're right beside the church, but they're not the church. So that's that. I mean, I'm 1,000% for all of this, and I think part of the reason that we need para churches, we need Young Life, we need InterVarsity, we need Crew, we need all these groups, Every Nation Campus, Alpha and Omega. I mean, all these different groups, and it's like the church hasn't always been there for the kids, so the parachurch is right there, which is a gift. It's really
a bridge, oftentimes, getting kids plugged in. I think a lot of people grow up maybe with a more religious experience than a relational experience.
Absolutely.
So they go to church to parlay sin or guilt or whatever, when really Jesus said, I will build my church. He's coming back for his bride, which is the church. And in an age where a lot of people would rather watch a sermon online, one of the things I'm a church girl for my whole life. And the reason I still am is because when you get in the midst of a church community, you see things about who you are and how God sees you in a way you cannot see from just being a consumer to a great message.
Yes.
You got to be challenged. You have people looking in your eye. It pulls you. It causes you to step out of your comfort zone. Church is very different than family. Family you're born with, you learn to love them, you do life with, but church is multidimensional, different,
Yes, it is.
young and old and rich and poor and healthy and not healthy.
Yeah.
And when you have to live with lots of diversity, it's what causes you to become a better disciple of Jesus Christ.
Let me add one thing. Yeah. Here is the gift of me. This is the Lord's sense of humor, just in terms of me being a church boy. So, my role within Young Life has ebbed and flowed and matured over time. So at one point I was the regional director, so I oversaw all of our ministry efforts in New York City. And then it expanded again. And so I had basically Eastern Pennsylvania all the way through Maine as a geography that I oversaw.
Wow.
That's a big region.
Yes.
It's a major, I mean, in New York City alone, how many high school students are there in New York City alone in this region? Is it like 3 or 4 or 5? How many?
Yeah, there's got to be probably about 500,000 or 600,000. There, at the last census count, there were 1.2 million adolescents under the age of 18. But that's such an old, outdated stat.
And the thing that's always concerned us here is the lack of youth ministries.
Mm-hmm.
And there's and the same is true for college ministries as well. I mean, there's a massive disparity for how many people are choosing to be campus ministers or youth ministers. They're choosing, and you could look at how many there are in Texas, Florida, some of those places. Then you come to New York City, and it's just a fraction of that, but it's 10 times larger than that. And so this is...
Because you have more college students. You have about 1 million college students within the New York City metro radius.
That's right. There's 1 million college students.
There are 650,000 just in the 5 boroughs alone.
Well, I would think that then that there's at least 2 or 3 million of high school and middle school students, right? So, and very few. So I'm appealing to people to reach out.
Finish your thought. Very few.
Very few people accepting the call. Jesus said the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few, and they're few here. Yet there are ministries that help people to receive the resources, the money. Some are on ministry partnership. I don't know how you do yours. Others get grants. Others have churches fund them. There's a lot of money in New York City as well, and I think some of that could be transferred to people. So you can reach out to us if you want us to maybe make some recommendations for Young Life, for Crusade, whoever. I mean, our ministry here is always open door as well.
So again, I had that Northeast corridor, and then that changed. So when that changed, the irony of being a church boy is my role shifted where I inherited a few different things. So now my office, really my umbrella for my office is U.S. major cities. So I really come alongside divisions and regions within Young Life to help them grow their cities, because the stats say that by 2030, that 60% of the globe is going to live in a major city, which means there are a ton of major cities that are growing up instead of growing out. And the suburbs will be the anomaly, and the cities will become more the center of life. I mean, of course, the late great Tim Keller, he had talked about that for eons. And so you got to think we're 5 years away from 60% of people living in major cities. So my role is to help our major cities grow their influence, their footprint, their impact in those major cities. But also under that umbrella, I have I steward our church partners, which is our outreach for the Protestant church, and our Catholic relations office. So I have basically the global church under my stewardship.
Paul Cody needs to be in the Pope's office. You're well qualified. Honestly, this is really a significant moment because really it's just a matter of another decade or so that there will be no major ethnic group here. So it's going to be this will really be the pot that everyone is piled into in multiple, so many different ethnicities. So this is the era that we're in, and we want to challenge everyone to drop whatever it is, your mentality, your thoughts of we belong somewhere else, whatever. This is the reality. People are going to be, it's going to be the rich, the poor, the young, the old, the different ethnicities, the different skin colors. And yet in the middle of it all is one named Jesus.
Yeah.
Jesus died and lived and rose from the grave for everyone. So whatever your background is, whatever your religion is, this is all about an invitation really right now for a relationship with God through Jesus. Paul, take it over from here. How would you present the good news to those who are watching today?
I think you summed it up in one way, and I'll just say it this way. Jesus did not come for religion, but he came for relationship. If you look at all that he did throughout the scriptures, the most combative conversations he had was not with the people, the Jewish community outside of the temple. It was really with the Jewish leaders within the temple. There's a book coming out that I'm going to plug that's not mine. It's called What Jesus Meant, and it's by a guy named Dr. Paul Penley. When you see that book come out, grab it.
Okay.
Because it really begins to help us interpret things that have been misinterpreted throughout the lens of Scripture for many, 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 many years and ages. And it is such a fantastic study and reframing of what it means to understand what Jesus meant when he said a thing. It's fantastic.
I think we met him in Colorado many years ago. Yeah, it was very enlightening, some of the things that he shared. So, we'll just go ahead right now and let you guys who are watching, thank you for joining in. But the heart of this ministry, the heart of this podcast is to help you to know that you can change your thoughts. And many people feel stuck, whether it's a religion, whether it's overwhelmed with their guilt, their shame, all of these things Jesus took care of when he went to the cross. He bore our sin into his body, and Jesus was so beaten and so torn apart and spit upon and laughed at, and all the things that this world did to him. That was what God allowed to happen, was that his son would be the bearer of the infirmities, the sickness, the disease, the sin, the degradation, all that went to Jesus on the cross. And the great news is that after they buried Jesus, he rose from the dead. He's alive. God made it clear that Jesus was God's son through his resurrection. Many people can say all they want about the Bible. The Bible has so many contradictions, all this and all that.
Sure.
But the resurrection is a historical reality, a historical moment where the stone rolled away, the Roman guards were just blown away, the angels came. All the things that happened and manifested in that moment were to let the world know that there's peace now because of what Jesus did. We don't have to live with the baggage of guilt and shame and sin and all this stuff. We can just turn it over to God completely because his son is alive, and his son Jesus bore the sin so that God the Father doesn't have to look at my sin, but he looked at his son's sin. And because Jesus is the federal headship of everything, then he is the one who has been shielded us from the punishment that we deserve. And we want to just praise Jesus for that and thank Jesus for that. And all we ask you to do right now is receive this prayer right now. Father, in Jesus' name, I pray that every person watching would know with all certainty that you love them, that while we were sinners, Christ died for us. And we're so grateful for that today. And as you can right now, just from the most sincere part of your heart, just say, Jesus, come into my life. be my Lord, be my Savior.
Yes. I believe that this podcast today, thank you, Paul, so much for your story. I think it's given a lot of people hope that the story isn't over for their kids, for those in their life, their siblings, friends who they've had a burden for that just seem too far to reach. We had a great story we recorded yesterday about a young man who grew up with Christian family and in the church and then rebelled against his Christian life for 30 years. And his parents never quit praying. And he was rescued back by the hand of God. And it was a radical coming back.
Powerful.
And it reminded us all that, just like you said to start, patience, and collaboration. And there's so many golden nuggets you gave us today, Paul. They're really so practical and so helpful.
Too, Paul. Can I say, let me say one thing to those of you who are under condemnation right now, and you are feeling like I can't come to him because of what I've done. My prayer is this story frees you, because it was an encounter that Jesus has with a woman who was caught in the very act of adultery. And they bring her, put her in front of Jesus, sit her at his feet, embarrassed as she could be, no clothes on, and she is sitting there now with the expectation that she is going to be stoned to death. But instead of condemning her, he kneels down and he begins to write in the dirt. Why does he do that? He does that because he wants to exhibit and show that none of us are, and he says later on, any of you who are without sin, and they could probably see it in writing, why don't you throw the first stone? And as the oldest first leaves, which the older we are, we obviously have more sin, down to the youngest, when they leave and she finds herself with Jesus by herself. And he asks one question, where are your accusers? And she says, I don't know. If that question had come to me, I would have said, my accuser is right here. And Jesus says, well, because you don't know where your accusers are, neither do I. Go and sin no more. Or in another translation, go and turn away from this particular life. I know that when you sit under the guilt of condemnation, it becomes paralyzing and hard to move. But Jesus did not come to condemn the world, but he came so that he could raise it, resurrect it, and transform it. And that person is you, no matter what you've done. He is waiting for you. He says he's not slack concerning his promises, as others would consider slackness. And then he says this, but God is patient with you. He's patient with you. He doesn't want any of us to be destroyed, but wants all of us to come to repentance. So if you are under the rock of condemnation right now, I would love to offer that release in Jesus' name to you right now, and pray, if you're under the sound of our voices, that you would allow Jesus to minister to you and give you the forgiveness that's required so that you can walk in freedom and have a life with him that does not include disaster.
That's powerful.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I'm sure that many people were encouraged by that. And it's been a great time with you, Paul. And it's been great to be with you as well. It's our privilege to serve you and let you know God loves you, and change your thoughts, change your life.
We'll see you next time.